Trigger warning. This podcast is about grief. Whether you are newly bereaved or whether you have been stuck in grief for years, I do hope this podcast brings you some comfort. Grief is such a universal experience, but we all do it differently. This podcast is not about fixing you or forcing the healing process, because there is no cure for grief. It can only be absorbed, experienced, loved and cared for. So whether you are doing it privately behind closed doors, or like me, you are kicking and screaming your way through, let's support each other. This is a safe space where we can come together and share experiences. My hope is that this podcast shines a light on your path and gives you the strength to navigate your way through the grieving process. My name is Louise Bates, and I'm so pleased we connected. I'm looking forward to interviewing people who have also walked this path to find out what worked for them, in the hope that it helps you too. I'm sending you so much love and support, and I look forward to sharing this crazy journey with you. Welcome to A Gift for Grief, the space where we hold honest conversations about life, loss, and the complicated emotions in between. I'm your host, Louise Bates, and today's episode is one that sits very close to the heart. My guest today is Vicky Holtham, a mother who has walked through many shapes of grief. In March 2008, Vicky's first son Adam was born prematurely at 28 weeks and sadly lived for just 2 days. This was an experience that profoundly shaped her perspective on life. Blessed with 2 more children, Ellis and Beth, she cherishes every moment, especially as Ellis lives with an incurable heart condition. In 2016, she lost her lovely mum to bowel cancer, a loss that pushed her to embrace her true self and live with purpose. And now she faces another painful chapter, the anticipatory grief of knowing her son Ellis is living with a life-limiting heart condition. In this conversation, we explore what it means to grieve and what might come. We talk about memory, resilience, and how love continues, quietly and powerfully, even through the hardest days. Welcome, Vicky.
Thank you for having me.
And thank you for being my guest. So we've just met today. I think we connected through Facebook.
Yes.
And then we had a telephone call.
Yeah.
And I said, you're going to be a fab guest on my podcast. So, oh my goodness, you have experienced a lot of grief. And also ongoing anticipatory grief with Ellis's heart condition.
Yeah.
Do you ever stop and think, why me? Why our family?
No, in all honesty, it's never crossed my mind. I'm just blessed to have my children and have had Adam. So, yeah, it's not something I ever think, because I suppose I don't live my life thinking that way. I don't know.
Yeah.
It's not something that says, oh, why it worries me. I just, it's part of experiencing life and different things. And so, no, it's never actually hit me that way.
Okay, and that's why you're going to be an amazing guest today. But let's talk about you first. So you work as an intuitive health guide, offering sessions in living nutrition and Reiki. And your holistic approach blends science, intuition and lifestyle to help others create lasting transformation. And I think more and more people are looking for these natural ways to feel better and look after themselves, aren't they?
Yeah. I think people are being more aware of their own health and well-being, especially, I don't like to think about COVID, but I think in that moment, people really did see how fragile life can be.
Yeah.
And how it is time to take sort of responsibility of our own health.
Yeah.
Conventional medicine, it's needed, it has its place, and, it saved my son's life, and I'd never, it's required, and it's amazing what it can do. But I also believe that people have kind of, in that growth of it, we've lost sight of what's naturally available to us.
Yeah.
So, yeah, definitely leaning into, I don't say alternative, it's complementary.
Yeah.
Medicines holistically. So, yes, for me, it's it's nurturing our own bodies and mind in the way we can.
Yes. Yeah.
In what works for us as well, which is why with the intuitive health guide practice that I do, it's holding space for people. So it's guiding them in the way that best serves them. And yes, I can give advice and guide people in the ways of nourishing the body, and that's through nutrition in what they eat, but also what you're nourishing your mind with, and also what we're exposed to through environment, toxins and all that. So and then all those things together, you are going to put like a foundation in place for your own health and well-being. And I do believe that gives peace of mind as well, because you feel like you're in, and I don't like the word control, so to speak, but you are sort of taking responsibility.
Absolutely,
to hopefully live your best life.
Yeah, I love that. Well, before we go into your grief journey, can you tell us a little bit about yourself and how you got into this type of work?
So I've always had a profound interest in the human body from a young child. I remember like watching TV programs and everything about it and fascinated. And then when I like looking at schooling and what I was going to do, I went down the medical field and did my nursing training. And I absolutely loved working as a nurse. But even though I was working as a nurse, I felt there was something I wasn't offering. There was something missing. So I loved being with the patients. I loved caring, but there was just something, I could never put my finger on it, but just something more.
Yeah.
And even when I was nursing, I kind of changed fields within the nursing realm, because there's something I just never quite felt I was doing that I wanted to do, like needed to do. And then when Ellis was born, I gave up nursing to be his full-time carer. So in that time, I always was still interested in learning. I've never stopped. I'm curious. I want to take on more. So I gained more and more information on nutrition. I learnt more into that, and sort of health and well-being. And when Adam had been born, when we were told, see the news about how his prognosis, and we made the decision that we were stopping the medical interventions, when we were able to actually hold him and be with him for the last few hours of his life, I remember taking him over to the window because it became night time, and I was showing him the stars. And I've always been a night watcher. I love the stars. And I showed him the stars. I said, you'll be the brightest star in the sky, and you'll be whoever you want to be. And no matter what, you will be you, and you'll be whoever you want to be, and I'll be with you. And I don't know what it was, but something clicked to me that day that was, you've got to be you. You've got to be you and live your life. And I realised that for most of my life, I'd been conforming to what I thought I had to do to fit in, because I never felt like I fit in. I felt now I can do something with it to help people that in a way that I didn't feel I'd been doing before. And that's where I've kind of come to now. So although I launched my business last year, in the last few months I've had a massive pivot, because even then I think I allowed external noise to guide how I was taking my business forward, and it wasn't serving my purpose and what I felt I was there to do, to help people. So now it's very much, it's not being a clinician, it's not being a practitioner, it is a guide, and it's just holding a safe space for people to be them.
Yeah.
And they can explore then ways to nurture their well-being, to help them moving forward, to hopefully live their better life. So it's reclaiming their voice, their true self, to feel more energised, live with more clarity and confidence.
And I think the fact that you've got the nursing training and the living nutrition and the Reiki, the complementary therapies, and through your own life experiences and your grief, a combination of all these different factors will help to make you that amazing person that is just not looking at your clients or patients, whatever you call them, from one perspective. You can help them in many ways, can't you?
Yeah. And I always, when I'm with people, it's always, no judgment, it's no preconceptions. It is just in that moment and in that space. And I do hope that they feel that when I'm with them, so that, it is taking things as it is. So I'm not I'm not a psychologist or anything like that, so I'm not delving into traumas or anything like that.
Yeah.
Yes, we know that those things do have an impact on our lives and how we maybe respond to things that's going on in the present, but it's working through things in that time. So yeah, I think all that together has helped me on my own journey.
Yeah.
And that's what I believe I can take with me with my clients, because I'm not saying that, we're not all healed. We're always on a journey.
Yeah, we're all a work in progress, aren't we?
Exactly. And I just feel like I'm on that journey with them.
Yes.
So it may be that I'm just maybe a few more steps ahead.
Yeah.
And that's where I can come in. So yeah, that's my hope.
So how can people get in contact with you, Vicky?
So at the moment, it's mainly through my social media. So on Instagram, it's AEB Wellness.
Yeah.
And then Facebook, it's AEB Wellness, but I've also got my personal page, which is Vicky Holtham, or on LinkedIn as Vicky Holtham.
Okay.
So at the moment, my website is unpublished. But
it's a work in progress.
It's a work in progress. But at the moment, yeah, they're the main ways.
Well, I'll pop those onto the show notes so people can get hold of you if they want to. So could you tell us a little bit about Adam? You were 28 weeks pregnant, but only share what you feel comfortable sharing.
Yeah, so it was all fine. The pregnancy was healthy, normal. There was never any issues. And yeah, I was up to it. I'd been at work that day, that Friday, and no problems. And it just happened, which I find, again, it's the universe speaking. It was actually Mother's Day he was born on. And I've never known a Mother's Day in early March. It's always been the end. And it was just really strange. I'd never known one. And I just woke up that morning, expecting to ring my mum to say Happy Mother's Day. And I remember just before picking up the phone, I thought, something's, I need to go to the toilet. And off I went and my waters broke. So I had no idea or anything that anything was happening. It just literally, so I told my husband, rang the hospital, and they just said, oh yeah, come in, we'll have a look. Even them, they were just a bit, oh yeah, just come in. So we were quite calm, we just went to the hospital. And then when we got there, I don't think at the time that they kind of took it seriously, that, what was going on. And they were just like, oh yeah, we'll take you through and someone will be along with you shortly. And then sort of waiting, and I was thinking, I don't know what's quite going on. So my husband said, well, I'll go out and ring your mum, because I said, oh, she'll be worrying. Well, I haven't rang. It's Mother's Day. It's already gone nearly 10 o'clock. She's going to be thinking what's going on. So he went out to ring them. And while he was gone, I was thinking, things aren't quite right here, So I called a midwife over and just said, look. And she said, oh, no, someone will be with you. I said, yeah, but I don't, there's something else. She goes, okay. And so she said, well, there's a toilet there if you feel you need to go. And when I stood up, she goes, oh, yeah, there aren't things quite. So she kind of rushed me into a room. And the next thing I knew, a consultant was in there. They scanned me and they said, yeah, he's coming now. So even then, they hadn't realised, they weren't quite realising, I don't think, exactly what was going on. So they said, yeah, we've got no time to actually prepare, do anything. He's literally coming. Right. So the next thing, they had called in the special care people to come in with the cot and everything. And yeah, within, he was born.
So
and
you had a natural delivery?
It was a natural delivery. There was, even to the point, there was no time for pain relief or anything like that. He just literally came. But the thing that will always stick in our minds is that when he was delivered, because he was so premature, they delivered him into a freezer bag because they couldn't touch his skin. And it's one of those things that will never, you just think, you can't look at a freezer bag again, because it's just like that.
I didn't realise that's what they did.
Yeah, his skin was so fragile at 28 weeks, they can't touch it. So he was, delivered into a freezer bag, and he actually cried. And he also let out a bit of wind. So it was really, we heard that one little cry, a bit of wind, he's actually our son, he's there.
Yeah.
Obviously, unfortunately, I couldn't touch him. They, took him away, and he was taken into the special area to be looked after. So yeah, it was all kind of surreal because it wasn't expected and it was so quick. And we laughed about it. My husband, they'd asked him if he'd wanted a drink, and he'd asked for a cup of tea. And he literally, as they'd brought it in, Adam was being born. So he had this cup of tea on the side, and he was like moving his, what do I do? Tea? Or? And then they realised, and we thought it was so funny. And then literally, Adam was born so quick that his cup of tea was still steaming hot. And we sort of think, it was like, is this real? It was just...
Is this happening? Yeah,
it
wow.
was just so strange. And so, I mean, even the birth and everything was no issues, no problems. And then sort of when my mum and my dad had come they live in Kent. So in the meantime, because Daniel had gone out and called, they sort of rushed up thinking, I want to come be with you. And so sort of time goes away. You don't really realise the time. And the next thing I know, sort of the nurses had come and said, we've got some visitors. Are you happy for them to come in? I was like, yeah. My mum came in and she was like, congratulations. And I loved that because it wasn't, even in that moment, there was no sort of worry or sadness. It was just, congratulations, you got your little boy,
here,
your baby, we were grandparents, and it was lovely. And we were just kind of just chatting, like, I hadn't seen my mum and dad for a few weeks because wherever they live. So, and I'd said Happy Mother's Day to her, and she said it to me, and it was just like, I'm a mum now, and so it was so lovely. And then she helped me then go into the bathroom and get ready and everything. Obviously, I didn't have anything with me because it wasn't expected. So the hospital had quickly grabbed some bits for me, and I just, put on the clothes I'd gone in, sort of thing. And then we were sat in a room waiting, and it just felt like hours. We were just like, what's going on? No one's telling us anything. And my dad at this time was getting quite frustrated because he said, there's no way they can leave you like this. So he went off, came back in, and he said, someone's going to come in and speak to you. And that was, I think, was the first time I got a bit worried because I was like, okay, why has somebody got to come talk to me? What's going on?
As a nurse as well and being trained, I suppose that thoughts are going through your head of what are they doing behind the scenes?
That's it, yeah. And I mean, 28 weeks, it's not, babies live at, at that time, it wasn't seen as really premature. It was, it still was premature, not like it is today where a lot of 28 weeks will live quite, they're very experienced now in a lot of them. But so back then it wasn't majorly premature, but not quite as advanced today. So I was kind of like, being hopeful.
Yeah.
And then, somebody eventually came in and they said, we're having problems intubating him. He's fighting us. But as soon as we can, we'll let you go and see him. And even then, you're kind of thinking, that sounds like positive. He's strong. He's fighting, So I thought, okay, not thinking anything of it. And then it felt like a few hours later again. And then eventually someone came in and said, do you want to come and see him? And we were taken into like the special care area, and he was on a cot, intubated and everything. So we couldn't touch him and anything, but we sort of saw him from a distance, which was lovely. And they gave me a picture. They said, we managed to take a picture for you because it was before the times of having camera phones everywhere.
Of course,
it was literally, I think they gave us a Polaroid. So we had a picture of him, which was lovely. And then we went back and they basically said, we need to transfer him to a special care because we aren't adapt here for that young gestation. So we're waiting for an ambulance to come. We've arranged it and we'll let you know once it gets here. And they took us into like a family room where we could wait.
Yeah.
And in that time, it seemed strange as well, but, we were just us as a family just chatting, like, we were visiting each other. And every now and again, it sort of hit me that, I've got a son. I wonder what's happening. And then eventually, medical member of staff came in and said, the ambulance is here to transfer him over to Leicester to a specialist unit. So once they've got him stabilised in a mobile cot, you can come see him, say goodbye, and then head over there yourselves. So we weren't able to go with him. So so that was the journey really of his birth. And then we sort of saw him in the cot quickly as they walked him over to the ambulance. And it was just weird then leaving the hospital thinking, I've got a baby, but I'm leaving the hospital and I'm not with him. And although it was emotional, at that point, there was no... real sadness. I wasn't into, there was nothing. I just felt like, okay, I'm going to go see him in a bit. Yeah. So we headed home. Obviously, we had nothing with us. Headed home, freshened up, and packed some stuff because they said, it's a long road ahead. So we thought, okay, we need some stuff. Packed it, went over to Leicester, and then when we got there, he was all settled into special care. They took us in and explained the situation. And that time they did say, he's stable, but it is very fragile at the moment because he they'd struggled to intubate him. So this was what they hadn't told us at the hospital, that they'd struggled to intubate him, and that's why it took so long for somebody to come and actually speak to us. So with that caused a bleed on the brain, and that's what they were trying to establish, how serious it was, what lasting effects that would have. So that's why they were monitoring him so closely, and they basically said the next 24 hours are like critical.
Yeah.
But they were very good. They kept us up to date every second. But we were able to be with him the whole time, just sat by his cot, and we'd got a little toy rattle thing that I loved Me Too bears at the time. So I'd got him one that was like a little rattle, and they let us put that in the cot with him. We put on a special blanket that my dad had bought him. So, they were very personal. We were able to be with him, and, they never told you to leave. Even, the doctors worked around you. You were, always informed. And so, I can live every second, even though it was 17 years ago. I can live it and breathe it.
Yeah.
But, so it was very, like I say, it was emotional. But I just felt like I couldn't leave his side. But it was so, just seeing him, it was just, he had lovely big blue eyes. And they'd got a little bonnet on him to keep his head warm. So we never really saw his like hair, and he was just tiny and cute. And they let us, every now and again you could like put your hand in and just, like, you weren't allowed to see stroke him or anything like that, because the nerve endings and the skin's so fragile that it can upset them. But you can put your finger in and like touch, like they could touch your finger and things. So it was lovely.
And that means a lot, doesn't it? At that point,
it's especially when you're used to like having them in you and you can feel them moving, and then suddenly they're not. But so that was it was the comfort thing. And he had this smell, and even now, like my husband, I go, oh, I can smell Adam. He has this particular smell that we associate with him, and it just every now and again you go, well, I can really smell him. And it's actually funny because now speaking about him, I've got this in the back of my nose. It's really funny, but it's him. But so that was the story of his birth. And then they just kept us up to date, and then over the next sort of 48 hours is when they said that unfortunately the bleed hadn't stopped. So at certain points they were sort of saying, it will mean he'll have cerebral palsy, he won't be able to walk because it's hit the motor side of the brain.
Right.
Then when it got to the part of the breathing side, they said then he will know, basically this is a decision now. We will keep him alive as much as you want, but realistically, should he survive this, won't be able to breathe for himself, he'll be blind, he'll be deaf, he won't be able to communicate in any way, he will exist like in a chair. And my husband and I they gave us our time, and they just said, you let us know what you want us to do. And we were just like, that's not a life, that's just existing. We don't want that for him, it's not fair. So that's when we said, we'll just stop the medical interventions. At which time they were brilliant. Then they just, said, any members of family you want, we'll contact them, they can come, there's not too many. They put blinds round us so we could just be with him. And then because obviously the interventions were being turned off, we were able to take him out the incubator and sit and cuddle him until sort of the evening, when we went into like a family room where they took the actual intubation out of him. And then we just held him like a baby because, he had no tubes, nothing on him then. We were just able to hold him, and he lived for about 4 hours like that. So it was about 8 o'clock in the evening when he actually died. But even then, it was done so beautifully. The midwives and the nurses and that, they left you to it. They weren't in the way, if you needed them, they'd come. Yeah. Because at one point we were like, we're not sure, with his breathing, if anything's happened. And then when they came in, they said, he has died. Yeah. They didn't rush. They let you stay there, and they came in and they took handprints and footprints. They gave us a little clipping of his hair, took pictures. So we had all those memories, and they gave us a little memory box that we've got at home that's got all his stuff. So even down to, a blood pressure cuff they'd used on him, the little band that he had on him, identity band, all those things. They gave a little box. and they carried him away in my top because they said, "Oh, if you want him wrapped in anything," and originally I was going to say his blanket, but my dad said, "Do you not want to keep that? Is that not something you think you might want?" And I hadn't thought of it like that, and so I did, and instead I wrapped him in my top that I was wearing, so that I said I'm always with him, cuddling him, and the nurse actually carried him away, so it was not like hospitalised. You know, she actually took, like when we were ready, and she never took him. She just said, "When you're ready, hand him over."
Right.
So it was done so lovely. And it was, and at that point, it was very, very sad to let him go. But, you know, we knew there was a time between us, my husband and I mutually like sort of nodded and said, yeah. And my sister and my mum, my dad were in the room at the time, and they were playing a song, The Snow Patrol, Chasing Cars. So that is a song now that is Adam's song.
Yes.
And so, we've got all these little memories that we've all, you know, so we know these signs that are here. But that's Adam's kind of story.
So it sounds like the hospital were very supportive and did all the right things. And that's not everybody's experience, is it? But it sounds like, I mean, I can't imagine you waking up one day and then 2 days later, you're saying goodbye to your son.
Yeah.
How do you pick yourself up from that?
I don't really know how. It's not something that you ever thought, you know, if somebody ever said anything to that, you'd be like, how on earth would you cope with that? But it's just something I did. You know, my husband and I, we were very lucky to be supported by family and friends. And together, we always talk about, we've always, from the moment we sort of knew each other, we've had a really good relationship where we can talk about anything and everything. We've always been very open. So we were both there for each other and knew when we needed to be just quiet or needed to do something. Like I say, we'd have moments where we'd laugh together, you know, we'd talk about things. And we just took time to be together. We'd go for walks. And I think it was certain little things we would do together that helped. And my family, my mum and dad were very good. They were there to support us. And then they kind of knew when to kind of go away. Like there was nothing, it was just not said, but they knew when to leave us or when we needed them. And my sister, she came up when she wasn't working to visit, and she was like very helpful to support. And I think just having that support anyway, but then little things that my husband and I would do together, we'd go for a walk and we'd just talk about like a memory or something. And just before that weekend that Adam was born, we'd done his nursery up. So we'd find, you know, 28 weeks, you kind of are at that point where you're sort of planning on doing things. So we'd literally finished doing his nursery, and I couldn't go in there when we came home. My mum had actually shut the door before we walked in the house when he was born, and because she'd done it, she didn't say anything, but she shut the door because she wasn't sure what, and I just couldn't take myself to go in there. And I can't remember how long it was before I went back in there, but I just remember one day thinking, it's time to go in there now. And I remember opening the door, and even though he'd never been there, it felt like his room. And the instant smell of him I got when I walked in there, even though he hadn't been there. And I remember taking the little teddy that I'd put in his cot and sitting it in the Moses basket and having his blanket in there and everything. And it was just like, that was still his room. And so we left it like that for ages. And then when we had his funeral, I'd left the door open because I was like, no, that's his room. And it just felt, and I'd put the box of all his memories in the cot as well. And that was his room. And it was how we left it for quite a few months after. It wasn't a shrine, it wasn't anything like that. But I remember going in there a few times, being really, really upset and heartbroken and crying. And I had a book that I had heard of before he was born. I'm a big Friends fan. And it was the book that Joey read on, and I loved it instantly. And it's, you know, as long as you're living, my child you will be.
Okay.
And, you know, I love you forever. It's that line. And so that book, I sat in his nursery and I'd read it. And so, yeah, that's his book. And so I've got that. And so little things like that would help. And I had my husband and I made a playlist of songs. So when I was pregnant, there were certain songs that we would listen to. And then the Chasing Cars ones, we had little playlists for him as well. And we'd managed, let's say it was in the day before phone cameras, but the hospital had given us one of those disposables.
Yeah.
So we'd managed to get some pictures of him that way. So we'd got that developed. And I think that was a bit of a hard time, that one, because I remember we went into town, we had a walk in and we took the camera to be developed. And back then you had to wait a few days before you got it back.
Back in the olden days.
Yeah. So we took it in and we sort of walked home, and then it just felt really strange. I don't know, there was just something weird. I couldn't put my finger on it. It was strange. And then when we went back to pick it up, I overwhelmed, emotional, and it hit me that he wasn't coming home. I think those pictures, it was weird. It felt like I was going to get him, but it wasn't. It was the pictures. And it hit me that he wasn't coming home. It was just photos.
Yeah.
So as much as they were precious, it really hit me that he wasn't coming home. And
these moments you can't prepare for. They just come out of the blue, don't they?
Yeah, and that was one of the big moments I remember of it hitting me, that this is reality. Yeah. He's not coming home. And then the next one was his funeral. When we had the chat, they ask you what you want. And because he was a baby, they offer a white casket. So he was in that, and they said, what vehicles do you want? And I said, I'm not having a hearse. He's not going anywhere on his own. He's a baby. And so we had just a limousine that my whole family could get in, because we said we could all be together. Yeah. And then my husband held Adam on his lap, and I was sat with them. Yeah. So we said, he's not travelling on his own. We're sitting with him and we're holding him. Yeah. So we held him on the journey, and we took him to a crematory. He was cremated. And, we carried him in together and we placed him down. And when I didn't want flowers or anything like that, but we just had his name and a little blue flower on it. And so we had a white rose as well on his, I call it his bed. And again, the next time it hit me that he wasn't coming home was when they pulled the curtain round.
Yes.
And that was the point that I was like, he's not. Because even when we carried him in, it seemed strange. He was there, and it was weird to think he's there, but he's not there.
Yeah.
And that was the next time that it really hit me that he's not coming home, is he? And from that moment, I think that's where the next stage of grief, the reality, I think, hits you then, that this is now it. It's real. Did
you have any counselling afterwards?
No, we were offered it. The hospital were very good with their follow-ups. They called us in a couple of weeks later to go through everything if we had any questions, if there's anything we wanted to know. So they were very open and honest with everything. And they offered us the hospital themselves don't do counselling, but they gave us support groups that we could approach if we wanted it. I personally at the time didn't need it, that I felt, because again, I've always been somebody that will talk through things. And I think also being quite open, and with my nursing background, I've done a lot of work with mental well-being and mental health. So I was working through those processes.
Yes.
And because I felt I could talk to people, I didn't feel I needed to talk to somebody else.
Yeah, yeah.
And I know some people say, but they'll have experience with grief. I was like, but everybody's experience is different anyway.
Absolutely,
so it doesn't, if I feel I'm better talking to a friend or a family member, I prefer that. But I know those people are there if I need it.
Yeah.
So I will reach out if I need it, because I've never been, I've not got a pride or anything. So if I need it, I'll ask for help. But I don't. I want to work, I can work through this.
Yeah.
So, I personally didn't need it. My husband didn't have it either. And over the past few years, he's had some issues, not obviously breaking his confidence. He's had some issues with his mental well-being. But I think, that's a journey that he's now on.
Yeah.
But, some of, I think, the stuff that's happened with Adam has maybe been part of that maybe at the time he didn't realise. Maybe he could have done with a little bit more support, but which he's having it now. And like he says, some of that is with Adam. Some of that's with Ellis as well because of the things we're going through with him.
Yes.
And then other stuff, some of that's also his own personal childhood issues. But yeah, so I think, at the time he didn't feel he needed it, but whether or not that's just something he didn't realise that's what he needed.
Yeah, it's difficult, isn't it? But the fact that you both communicate really well together, you were a support for each other at the time.
Yeah.
And it's lovely that, I feel like Adam's still in your life now. You smell him.
Yeah.
And that's beautiful, isn't it?
Yeah.
And that can give you some comfort.
Oh, yeah. I always believe that he's with me.
Yeah.
I always do. I know he is. And, there's not a day that doesn't go by that I don't think about him. But every day it's just that bit easier.
So how old would he be now?
17.
17.
Yeah.
Oh. And then a few years ago you lost your lovely mum.
Yes.
So having experienced the death of your son Adam at just 2 days old and then your mum to cancer more recently, how do you carry the grief for each loss?
I guess, it's not something I think of it as in I'm carrying a pain or anything. Because I always feel like they're with me. So I'm sad that I can't physically be with them, but I know that they're with me and I'll talk to them. I will talk to them. So I don't miss them in that way because I do talk to them and I believe they're with me. So in that way, I've got comfort that in that. But yeah, every day I will always think about Adam and I'll always think about my mum, and there's certain things that I'll do or say and I'm like, that'd be for their, they'd like that, or my mum would like that, or she would have thought that. But with my mum, again, it was very quick. She got diagnosed with bowel cancer and they basically said it was so aggressive because it was diagnosed so late.
Right.
That they said 18 months if she had chemo, it'd be 6 months without. And she sort of said, I'm not ready to go yet. So she had the chemo, but then she was getting quite poorly with it. And she said, I want to stop it because I want the quality with my family. I want that time now. And we were 100%. I said, whatever she wanted, whatever her choices, all from the beginning, we were like, we're here for you. So we just spent as much time as we could with her. So to me, again, the time span, so to speak, wasn't a thing that was there. It wasn't drawn out. But it's strange because my sister and I both said we were kind of in our little bubble that, we were with my mum. So what was going on was almost like a bubble that we're in, this nice bubble of being with my mum. Yeah. And we're spending time with her in that time, not thinking what will be. Yes. That's going to happen, but it's in that's not there. We're in this bubble of we're with my mum, we're going to spend time. And my children and her daughter were like, with their nan, and we were doing stuff together. And the last 6 weeks school holidays that, we had to, my husband was very good. He said, yeah, you go spend as much time with you want, so because he couldn't have that time off work, but the children were off school, so we went down there. They were only very young at the time, so it was still nursery and primary school. And we spent most of that holiday with her. And we just, when she wasn't too poorly and in bed, she would sit with us and we'd chat. But when she was in bed, we'd just go and sit with her and chat with her. And I always remember we had a picture frame that spelt out the word, because we called her Naggy, because we were joking when my sister was having her daughter. We were like, what do you want to be, a nan, a grandma, a nanny? And she came up with the word. She goes, I think I'm more of a nan. And we jokingly turned around and said, more like a nag, because, joke, say nagging. And it stuck, so she became Naggy. Yeah. And she loved it because she said that's our term of, it wasn't a horrible, it was our own personal Naggy. I love that. So we got a picture frame made that spelt out the word Naggy, the words you could put a photo in. Yeah. And we'd done it as a present before my daughter Beth was born. So she wasn't in it yet. And I was like, my mum can't not see her in that picture frame. So I remember while I was down there, I'd got some pictures developed of Beth, and I sat on the bed with her and I swapped some of the pictures out and said, oh, look, did you like this one? Should we put this? So she sat with me while I did it.
Yeah.
And I hung it on the wall where it was by her bed. And she was like, oh, I love that. And she was smiling at it. And something in me knew that she wouldn't be there much longer.
Yeah.
But I just felt I knew I had to get that done.
Yeah.
And she had to see Beth in it. And so that was towards like the end of August. And yeah, she died the January. So the Christmas, she was very poorly, but she was at home. And we spent Christmas with her and New Year. And then in the early January, my sister rang me to basically say, she's really poorly, you need to come. And we, spent some time with my mum for a few days before she went in. She wanted to go in the hospice because she always says, I don't want to die at home. I don't want any burden on any of the family. So she went to a hospice, and yeah, that was a really peaceful time. The hospice were amazing.
They are incredible places, aren't they?
Yeah, it didn't feel clinical.
No.
And there was no sadness. It was, and there was nothing too much. And the family can come and go. And they were really, And even there they said, if you need support, if you, we've got counselling available. And that was for anybody that needed it. So, even the children, they said, although we aren't experts with children, we can point you in the place for children. Yeah. So it was even that. They were so lovely. They never kicked you out. You could be there 24/7, which we were. And even that, it was the night my mum actually died. It was my dad, my sister, and I was sat in the room with her.
Yeah.
And we were just sat. And I remember I had my head on the bed, and I was holding her hand, and my sister was the other side. My dad was by the bed, and we were just sort of sat there. And I looked at my sister, and she looked at me, and she went, "She's gone." And I said, "Yes." And we both sort of knew it. And we kind of looked at my dad as if to say, she's gone. And it was just the three of us, and we all just sort of sat and held her hand and kissed her. And then I went out to sort of say to one of the nurses, and she came in, and again, it was just so peacefully done. And they never, rushed us. They just said, take your time. And then we left the room for a bit so they say like, they just wanted to clean her up and make sure she was, done. And then they called us back in, and they'd put like some flowers with her, and they made sure she had no drips or anything on her. And they just said, stay as long as you like. And again, we did. And eventually, when we knew it was time, we left. And
the care is incredible in a hospice. It's not just the care for the person that's dying. It's how they care for the family and the friends, the visitors.
Yeah.
It's such a special place, isn't it?
It really is. It's so peaceful. And it is like a home away from home.
Yes,
I know some people say, oh, how it's strange, but it really is.
It is, yeah. But did you find, Vicky, after your losses, that people were unsure how to be around you in the early days and not know what to say or what to do? Did you find people felt a little bit awkward?
I think, yes. I mean, I was fortunate that when Adam died, my mum was very good in, she listened and picked up on cues. And I remember saying about, mentioned something about, isn't it funny how, when you have a baby, you get all the congratulations card. And I said, I won't get those, will I? And the next thing I knew, my mum and dad had got us one because they'd brought it into the hospital with them.
Yeah.
And we'd all got get well cards as well for Adam because, it was the hope that we had he'd get well. So we had those.
Yeah.
But then I remember a few days later having all these cards come in the post. My mum must have told family and friends, look, she's had a baby. And so it was strange because I kept getting all these condolence cards, and at the same time I was getting the congratulations card. And it was lovely because it was like, I am a mum. And my mum kept saying, but you are a mum. He's made you a mum. And I was like, yeah. And the fact he was born on Mother's Day, it was like, do you know what? He's born on Mother's Day.
It's like your gift.
Yeah. And my husband, bless him, he'd actually already prepared. So he'd got a card, and he'd got a Me Too bear that says best mummy. And he'd got it all wrapped up, and he just didn't know what to do because he said it was all ready for Mother's Day. And then obviously Adam's born, and he said, I didn't know what to do. I didn't want to upset you, but I didn't know what to do. And he gave them to me. And it was so lovely because it was like, it felt they were from Adam because he was actually born on. So it was lovely having that.
Yeah.
So, it was, again, it's being open and asking the person, what do you want, I think is a good thing to do for people. So even though people do feel awkward, my advice is you don't need to feel awkward. It's difficult, but actually just ask that person, you know, what they want, how you can be there for them.
Yeah.
Because everybody's going to be different. So for me, acknowledging the fact that I was a mum.
Yeah.
And so having the congratulations cards was really touching.
Yeah.
And people sort of been, you know, saying, you know, they struggled to know what to say. But a lot of the time, it was just a hug because they didn't know what to say. It was a hug. You know, I'm quite a tactile person. I know some people don't like hugs. So again, it's what's personal. So yeah, it is hard. I mean, with my mum, because it was an adult, I suppose it might be a little bit different in how they approached it because they knew my mum. Whereas with Adam, they hadn't met him, they didn't know him.
Yeah.
So it was more my loss that they were sort of navigating. Whereas with my mum, they had a loss as well.
Yes.
So because they knew her, and so they were kind of probably coming from their own experiences.
Yeah.
So they were more able to talk about her or in that way. So I think hers was a bit different. And again, I'm very much, I don't like not talking about, it's like they've existed, they lived, they had a life. So don't ignore them. Don't ignore that they're not here anymore. So if you walk in a room and suddenly go and say their name, they'll be like, oh, you know, it's like, well, why wouldn't you? It's normal.
Yes.
You know, that's their room. You're going to say, oh, that's hers, or not, that was her. You know, it's, you know, so to me, it was different, and people I think they do struggle. Yeah. But that's not a judgment thing as well, because it is difficult. You don't know.
Absolutely. Yeah. And people, you know, we need to learn how to engage with this topic, don't we? Yeah. And I think having these sorts of conversations, having podcasts about grief, and people can hear us talking about it, we can almost sort of normalise the conversation so people can learn to engage with it and feel more comfortable about it, because there is a lot of awkwardness out there. And I think people are just worried that they're going to say or do the wrong thing. Yeah. But say something, do something, because that's better than ignoring it, isn't it? And if somebody says something and it lands wrong, just look for the good intention behind it. Yeah. So yes, it's a very interesting time, isn't it?
It is. I think it is a taboo subject, but again, I think because, I mean, especially having Adam, and I'm saying, you know, leaning into my true self, I've always been very spiritual, so I do believe that they're all around us. Yes. So although I'm not religious, I am spiritual, so I believe that, you know, it's the universe and we're all part of it, so they're always with us. So I've always said, like, death is the opposite of birth. It's inevitable. It's going to happen. Yeah. So talk about it. Like you say, normalise it. It shouldn't be taboo, because the more you normalise something, it's easier to deal with, whether that's being somebody who's experiencing it or somebody who you're around who's experiencing it. Because again, it's like if you talk about something enough, it becomes easier to talk about. Yes. So approaching somebody who's gone, you know, like I say, you reach out to those people and you say it's better to do something than not. So staying away, it actually feels like sometimes people feel like, oh, why aren't they coming to see me, or why aren't they talking to me anymore? And, you know, and it's sad that, you know, maybe relationships, friendships break down just because they're too scared what to say, that they stay away. Yes. Rather than, you know, don't be scared. Like you say, if you say something that might upset them, sometimes actually it needs to be said because it's making them feel. Sometimes they need to feel, you know, it might actually bring up something that they needed to hear to be able to feel. But then you just acknowledge it. If it has upset them, you say, oh, sorry, I didn't mean to upset you or offend you. You know, it like I say, it's behind, the intention is the good intention behind it. Yes. So, yeah, it's definitely something we should all get used to talking about. Yeah,
I think so too. Now, your son Ellis has had numerous surgeries, but in July, his cardiologist said there is nothing more they can do. And it's all about the quality of his life from now on. So even with the best palliative care team in the world, how do you live with this on a daily basis?
I think because with Ellis's condition, we knew when I was at my 20-week scan that he had this condition and the journey we would be on. And because we always knew it was incurable, we've always known. Okay. So we've kind of lived in it's not a bubble, it's not denial, but to live, it can't just be at the forefront of our mind. So we know it's there, but we'll go through day as if, again, it's been present, it's been in that moment. And at the moment, he's stable, he's fine, So that's how we've always lived every day. So when he was born, as soon as he was born, because the plans were in place of what to do medically, again, he was born very quickly. He was 4 weeks early. So again, he was very tiny, but they took him to Birmingham Children's Hospital from Coventry, where he was born. And he was put into intensive care. And for the first 6 weeks of his life, he was in and out of intensive care. He had to have surgery at less than 24 hours old because the medicines they were giving him weren't working. So, that whole 6 weeks, again, was so up and down. It was an emotional roller coaster. But again, we were just so, he's here, we're hopeful, we're going to take him home. And, it was very, very emotional times, very scary times, because there was many times where he was getting so poorly and we weren't sure what was going to happen. But luckily we managed to get him home 2 days before Christmas. Oh. So we managed to have his first Christmas at home, which was so magical. And the lovely thing was, when we got home, my husband had to pop into town to get some bits and pieces, and it was they were closing up one of the shops which had a Santa in there. And he said what had happened. He was, and they said, no, we're staying open, go and get him. So he phoned me and said, right, wrap him up, we come in. And he got back home, we got in the car and we drove down to town and we took him in. And he was his tiny, tiny little bundle. And the Santa and elves were there, and we had a picture, and they were all in tears, and it was so emotional. And it was just like,
it's making me emotional, you telling the story.
But it was, it was so magical. It's like, it's his first Christmas. He's with us. We've been through so much, and this is just, amazing. And yeah, it was just so lovely. And it's things like that. So we just kind of live in that. We're here with him, he's here, and he's been in and out of hospital. But every time it's that, the time it brings it all to the forefront.
Yeah.
So it is difficult. Those times are difficult. And I kind of have to go into that place in my mind to cope.
Yeah.
And I couldn't verbalise that. I couldn't say to somebody, this is what I do, this is how I do it. I just don't know how. It's just, you do it. My husband has said before, people have said, how do you do it? And he goes, I don't know, you just do.
You don't have a choice, do you?
You just do, you do it. You don't have any idea, but you just do it. Yeah. And that's how we do it. So in July, we kind of had an idea this was coming, because we'd been told a few months before that we thought, these interventions, that was, there was nothing more. But the consultant said, we'll try one more and we'll see what happens. And again, we lived with that little bit of hope, but we were quite realistic. We weren't sure. And it didn't do anything. So they basically said, so now is the time. It is palliative, which, although he's had interventions, it's always classed as palliative because they're not curing and it is sustaining.
Yeah.
So yes, and now we are in the stages of, we've been, the palliative care team are involved now. They come out and visit. We've got end of life plans in place, we've got quality of life plans in place and all these things, and we've got the support for us as a family, for Ellis, and especially for my daughter going through all this emotional things as well. So they've been absolutely amazing. But again, as a family, the four of us, we just talk openly and honestly, and we're always, our best times are when we're together, just having a lovely family times. We're not about big gestures, we're not about, going on these family lavish holidays or anything like that, just having some time. I mean,
quality time together.
And that's how I think we do it, because we are just living today with each other, and that inevitable is going to happen. But like I say, nobody knows how long they've got. Don't like to say, you walk outdoors and you get hit by a bus, but it happens. So nobody knows. So yes, we know time is limited, but nobody knows what time they've got anyway. So I'm always grateful for every moment we have together. And again, mention the whole COVID word, but although it was a horrible time in the world and for everybody. And with Ellis being so vulnerable, we shielded him. So before the lockdown, we went into, he had to be shielded from about 2-3 weeks before, when it was first starting to come out into the public. And so and then we couldn't come out either when everybody else did. So for a good 18 months, the four of us were kind of shielded in that home. But we had some of the best moments. Yes, the weather was brilliant, so it made some time. But we were out in the garden, had the paddling pool out. We were, we couldn't go anywhere, and we had shopping delivered. We didn't see any friends and family because nobody was allowed, even when, you were allowed some contact because Ellis was shielded, we couldn't. So any conversations were people sort of like way across the road from us or online. So we had family contact, but the four of us being together, we had such like laughs and played games. And we, even we sort of said, isn't it strange? We've almost... there's nothing we feel like we're lacking. It's just us and having this lovely time. So when we started going out, it felt really alien. We were like, what are we doing? This feels really strange. And, but, it's taken us probably only till sort of recently that we're actually going out and about feeling this is part of normal life, But again, we just have these moments together. We'll have places where we go as a family that are like we love Barry Island in Wales. And we've been going since the kids were tiny. And so to us, that's like, a lavish holiday, just going for an overnight stay. And it's moments like that.
It's about the quality, isn't it? It doesn't matter where you are.
That's it.
If you're a good team, you'll enjoy yourselves wherever you are.
Exactly, yeah.
So, Vicky, do you believe that your grief experiences have changed you in any way?
I definitely think they've made me realise how strong I can be.
Yes.
Because it's something that I would never imagine. When I was sort of late teens, I remember going through a period of, and early 20s when I moved away, especially from my family, I suppose that was a kind of grief, moving away, it's that from that old life, so to speak. And I remember struggling, and I spoke to a friend who was actually a counsellor, and I just explained how I was feeling. And she said, well, it's natural. It's a big step in life. And I said, but doing this, I said, God, I just couldn't imagine losing my parents. Like, it would kill me. And we sort of had a few words about it, and I can't exactly remember now what she'd said, but obviously it helped me. So when it actually happens, you just think, I'd never get through something like that. So when Adam was born, I didn't have time to think about it because it happened and it was just so quick.
Yeah.
So to go through grief at that extent. So I'd lost grandparents, and although it was sad and I loved my grandparents, the actual real grief I had was with my son because he was so part of me. So I think that was the first time I experienced what it was like. So that, yes, it's shown me how strong I can be, but not that that's what I set out to do, but I think it shows me how I can cope with things. And also it makes me, like I say, with Adam, it's just made me be me. I'm not scared to be me. I'm not trying to be somebody I'm not. Life's too short. And I don't worry about the little things because, it's all part of life, and it's leaning in and just loving and learning every day.
Well, your strength certainly is coming across. You are amazing. So where are you in your grief journey now?
I suppose I don't see myself as grieving. I don't feel I'm in a journey like that. I mean, there's not, like I say, not a day goes by when I don't think about Adam and my mum.
Yeah.
But in a nice way, like I know they're with me.
Yeah.
And like I say, I'll talk to them, I will do things. And so in that respect, I don't feel heavy. I don't feel like I've got that weight of a grief of missing. I'm like I say before, I miss kind of the physical thing that I can't hug my mum or have a chat.
Yeah.
But then because I believe they're with me and talk to me, and I always remember when I was growing up, my mum always used to say to me, if you ever need a hug, feel my arms around you.
Oh.
And that is such a lovely thing that she's left with me because I do feel that. And I say it to my own children when I said, always remember, if you need a hug, feel my arms around you. So I do. I honestly feel that she's with me. And so that, and so in that stage of things, that's where
I like that. So what are your thoughts about the afterlife?
again, because I'm very much believe we are part of the universe. I do believe that. So I don't believe there's like a heaven. I believe that we're on this earth to experience it, and we will be part of the universe again. So again, Adam and my mum are part of it. So, you know, we're all stardust at the end of the day, and we're in this human form. So to me, they're here, they're around me because they're part of the universe. So I have that comfort. It almost feels like I've got a blanket around me the whole time, and it's them. It's just a permanent, they're here, they're with me.
Yeah.
And it almost does feel like I can feel something around me. And especially like in conversations like this, it's almost like I can feel it even more.
They're here.
They're here, they're around me. So, yeah, that's my beliefs.
And I know that you say you have this smell and it's Adam coming in. Have you had any other signs?
Yeah, there'll be little things that I'll see or do and I think that's them. And I mean, we definitely have two Robins. One I know is my mum and one we know is Adam. And Ellis and Beth and my husband, we all say it, and we'll be in the kitchen or in the living room where you can see out in the back, and the Robins will come, and Adam is the little bouncy one that jumps around and flaps around, and he'll jump around out the window and right in the garden. And my mum is more the one that will come in and fly over, and she'll land somewhere and just sit, and they'll just be there. And yeah, it really feels like it's them, because you'll know there's other Robins in the garden.
Yeah.
But there's particular that you know that's them, and they'll be there. And it's funny because they'll often come as well when there's a time of either you're thinking something or almost like a reassurance, like, oh, am I doing the right thing? And there'll be times when, and there'll be moments like maybe on their birthdays or whatever that you'll see it particularly.
Yeah.
Or the four of us will be together doing something, and then it'll be there, and you'll be like, you've come to join.
Yeah.
You know, whatever we're doing.
I love that. So even though you know your mum and Adam around you all the time, isn't it lovely when you get these little visitations as well?
Yes.
It's more confirmation, isn't it?
Yeah.
I love that.
Yeah.
So if you could give Adam and your mum a message today, what would you say?
I'd probably say thank you for being a part of my life. And I know that they're with me always. And yeah, that I love them.
I love that.
That would be,
Perfect. Well, Vicky, thank you so much for being my guest today. I hope you continue to find the strength and support you need, and I hope you realise how bloody amazing you are. Thank you for sharing your story today. Grief doesn't follow a timeline. It returns in waves, in whispers, and sometimes in ways we don't expect. What Vicky shared today is a powerful reminder that even in the most fragile moments, there can be strength, connection, and meaning. If today's episode resonated with you, or if you're navigating grief yourself, know that you're not alone. We see you, we hold space for you. If you found comfort in this episode, please consider sharing it with someone who might need it. And if you haven't already, subscribe to this podcast so you don't miss any future episodes where we continue to explore the many faces of grief and the unexpected gifts it can offer. Until next time, take care of yourselves and each other. Thank you for listening to this episode of A Gift for Grief. Please feel free to share it with your friends and family, and let's encourage others to become more grief literate. If you're struggling with your grief or worried about your mental health, please do speak to your doctor. For more information about my story and my 2 books about grief, visit my website www.louisebates.co.uk. The music on this podcast was written and recorded by Matthew Bates and can be found on his 2 albums, Fight Back and Kaleidoscope.